What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Welton, joined by Sergeant Welton. Glenn, how are you?
I'm really good.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about when the Brotherhood becomes toxic and how to recognize unhealthy loyalty in law enforcement.
There's, I think over time, especially being in law enforcement for as long as I have, you know who you can have a healthy relationship, and then not only that, but those people who bring things to the limit, and you know it's not right, but you protect them, you defend them no matter what it is.
Yeah, and so essentially brotherhood or sisterhood is supposed to protect you, but what happens when it starts to silence you instead is something that I think is so important to be able to kind of pinpoint so that we can all recognize it. And it doesn't really matter what profession that you work in. I think this applies to all of us. Of course, the bond between first responders is basically forged in fire, right? Because you guys have this shared trauma, you have long shifts, you have these life or death situations that you're sharing. But sometimes I think that bond can actually become a chain.
You get stuck in this routine of being able to just stay silent or not being able to step up and intercede. And I think that's one of those things is you're valuing your friendship or your brotherhood over what's right.
I'm glad you made mention of the word silent, because that's an example that I have on here as just a way to be able to tell that things might be turning toxic. So let's say an example I can give is you witness something unethical, but you're told don't be that guy, right? That can create this sort of moral conflict and long-term guilt or resentment between you and that other person.
Yeah, because you're going against your own internal values and your own integrity, and you start building up that resentment more and more. You're not able to actually stand up for what you believe in and or what's right. And so like on the opposite end of it, like I would want one of my partners, one of my buddies to tell me, hey, I don't think that was necessarily right. Let's see how we can change that.
But don't you think that you working in a supervisor position now, maybe that has swayed that perception a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's something that I think over time, you see that dynamic shift. And from a supervisory, like you're wanting to protect your people, you're wanting to protect the department and the city because you're looking at the liability aspects of it. But I think all honesty with it too is you start seeing, well, what's right, what's wrong. And that's where it's just following policy. Like, you know me, like if there's a rule, like I have to follow it.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about like from an admin position, managing a pediatric practice, owning my own business. There's a difference when you are on like lower on the totem pole, for example, where it's like, don't tell on me, versus being in a higher position, like I want you to tell on them.
Yeah, and really recognizing that and knowing the differences is, especially with being a supervisor, one, you don't put yourself in a situation, you're not going out and hunting for like wrongdoing and someone doing something that they shouldn't be, but you're there to say, okay, let's learn from this and make the changes to reflect what's right.
Yeah, another example of how things might be turning toxic is, let's say that you're having personal struggles and you're basically getting mocked or ignored. So an example would be that you open up about things like mental health or your marital struggles and you get shut down with things like jokes or sarcasm, or the worst one yet is like, you're fine. And then that person turns it around on them and starts talking about all the things that they've gone through.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of a specific, like I remember when I was still a detective, we had a meeting for the task force that I was on, and they brought in a psychologist just to kind of talk about what she does and how helpful she is for different members of the task force that I was on. And the whole time she was talking about, oh, look what I've done and my own trauma and my own XYZ. Afterwards, like, I actually talked to our coordinator. I go, yeah, she's horrible. Like, because she had nothing to do with trying to help other people. She was just talking about how she understands the amount of stress and stressors that are put on us as investigators, because she went out on one search warrant one time and saw something horrible.
Yeah, I remember you having that conversation, and a lot of that has to do with your own skills, training, and experience. And then, of course, what you hear repeated from me on a daily basis. I remember that vividly. And it can be really unhealthy when that happens. And another thing is that loyalty can actually start to be used as a weapon against you sometimes. So let's say that you're guilted into working overtime, or maybe covering for bad behavior, something like avoiding somebody because the group says no. These all undermine your personal boundaries and your values when that happens.
Being able, like, it goes into the whole high school realm of everything's very cliquey, and being around those certain people, oh, that's just career suicide. You can't hang around them. You can't help them. You can't do anything with it. And I think over time, if you're not doing this, then you're going to be like that person. And using those as examples, like, it's going to hurt your career. It's going to hurt your standing of who you are as a person when it goes against anything and everything in your values that you hold.
You are such a great framework for this, because you're very there is no blurred line between who you are, right? Like, your morals, your values, how you do things, how you just said, like, I have to follow the rules. Like, that's exactly how you are. And something that I have noticed that could also be a toxic sign that this could be happening to you is when you see that somebody is disrespecting you, but then they're framing it as brotherhood. So it could be something like, oh, this is just how we joke around here. When it comes across as something that's emotional or even professional, kind of blurred the lines, for example. And I think that this really fosters a toxic environment that pushes the good officers out, and then it also breeds a lot of resentment.
Yeah, and holding on to that resentment is something that it's so toxic for you as an individual. And I think in those types of environments, there's always approaches to be able to handle it. And, like, I always tell my guys, like, handle it at your level. If you can't do that, then I'll get involved, depending on what it is, of course. But it's one of those situations, like, we're all adults. We need to figure out this stuff on our own and be able to support one another, because we're all on the same team. Like, you don't see any sports teams going out and saying, okay, it's only me on this team, and I'm going to complete this mission by myself. Yeah,
another thing that I see is that, like, you're pushed out for speaking up. So let's say you report on something and it leads to you being iced out or passed over for a promotion. That happens all the time. Or you're being labeled a problem, or where you just know that whole high school drama kind of whispering in the corner is taking place about you because you did speak up about something. That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear when I am working with people, is that, like, admin doesn't take control over that. But I think that there are a lot of ways for us to be able to stay true to ourselves without sort of abandoning the team, so to speak. And one of the most important things, which does require practice, but it also requires confidence, is to make sure that you're practicing speaking up early. Because the longer that you stay quiet, I think the harder that it gets. So if you start small and you're honest in a really safe and private conversation, then I think that that's the easiest way to go about it before things go public.
Yeah, I can think of a specific incident where an officer actually, in the middle of briefing, called out a sergeant for something. And you have to frame your time and place. You have to know how you're approaching the situation. You can't just blatantly, in front of everybody who's in that briefing, call out your superior for something that you were actually wrong in.
I'm gonna pause you there, because you can, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because I definitely would. Not if I was in the wrong. I probably.
Yeah.
That's another conversation. But you could definitely have a lot of class and poise, and I think that having something like a briefing is often the perfect way to be able to kind of air that elephant out.
And I agree with you, but it's bringing forward the facts. Don't you want to make sure, one, that you're within the policies and procedures. If someone did something absolutely wrong, absolutely. And being able to approach it in a civil way is the best way to do it. But you can't come in as, well, I think you should do this instead, when this guy has 6 months on and you have a 20-year veteran on in front of him saying, yeah, you need to shut the hell up.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's say that wasn't the case, though, and like that officer wasn't the one in the wrong. A great strategy for that is to actually act stupid. And what I mean by that is pose things in a question, you know? So I was under the impression that I was supposed to operate under X, Y, and Z condition, but so-and-so told me that instead I'm supposed to do this, and then this is what happened. So can I get some clarity on that? And imagine if you're sitting there in briefing and you have everybody around you and you're calling them out, but still being very classy about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest part is these guys in general. I think we don't think about our statements or our questions of what we want to pose, and being able to do that in a very strategical way is really important.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.